Drugs are bad, so they should be illegal, right? Well, here's the backstory you're not being told. In 1971, President Nixon declared a war on drugs. He gave a speech where he proclaimed that public enemy number one in the United States is drug abuse. In order to fight and defeat this enemy, it's necessary to wage a new, all-out offensive. And thus began the so-called war on drugs. Since then, over $1 trillion have been spent enforcing the prohibition of drugs, and millions of people's lives and families have been torn apart and destroyed, not by drugs themselves, but by the harsh fines and prison sentences that come with possession. Let's look at a few relevant numbers. In 2014, there were more than 1.5 million drug arrests in the U.S. More than 80% were for possession only. Let that sink in. That means 1.2 million people in 2014 were not arrested for stealing or vandalism or mugging or violating anyone's rights. They were arrested for possessing a substance, most often an unprocessed plant, a leaf. These arrests and prison sentences, often lasting decades, haven't seemed to curtail drug use in the slightest. In 1969, before the drug war began, only 48% of Americans considered drug use to be a serious problem. By 1995, that number had risen to 94%. In the public mind, and statistically, prohibiting drugs has been an utter failure. So, what if we decriminalized drugs? What horror would happen? Well, lucky for us, we don't have to imagine. There's a real-world case we can study. In 2001, Portugal decriminalized all drugs, all of them. Marijuana, cocaine, even heroin and meth. Since then, there has been no rampant increase in drug usage, and people are not dropping dead in the street from overdoses like so many claim would happen. In fact, currently, only about 3 in 1 million people die from a drug overdose in Portugal. Compare that to 150 overdose deaths per million in the US under Prohibition. None of the terrible and awful things that people feared from decriminalizing drugs have happened in Portugal. Drug-related crime has dropped, and the estimated number of drug addicts has been cut in half. In America, the federal government's attempt to utilize force to control what a person can put into their own body has been an abysmal failure, and the money, time, and resources spent to suppress individual liberty has been a complete waste, even counterproductive. It's time to end the war on drugs. End this war on families. End the war on people. And that's the backstory.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate all your support. Make sure you subscribe so you can keep up with all of my videos, and also follow me on Facebook. All This with Aldous is the name of our page, and on Twitter at Aldous Talks. Thanks. Catch you later.
Sweet, I like that.